Well, of course, the biggest piece of news in, well, everything involving the world of movies and entertainment recently, at least for the last 6 months, has been the concept of Paramount buying Warner Brothers. And one of the big questions that also raises for people who are fans of genre stuff is, what would that mean specifically for DC, this brand new DCU that got off to a triumphant start with Superman, making, by the way, just to remind everybody, despite how bad the DCEU drove the reputation of DC into the ground, Superman came out and made more money than the previous 7 DCEU movies, made well over $600 million, got over an 80% critic score, and got into the 90% of the audience score. It was a triumphant return. But what would happen if Paramount does indeed get Warner Brothers? And would they get rid of James Gunn? Would James Gunn say, I'm out of here anyway? I don't know. Well, a really interesting story just came out in Variety that, not talked about that one. That's not the one I'm talking about, which is, where's my story here? I lost my story. There's my story. Sorry, I had the wrong one up there. So a really interesting story just came out about David Ellison. According to this report in The Hollywood Reporter, actually went to the set of Man of Tomorrow and met with Peter Safran and James Gunn. And one of the secondary producers of the film said, David Ellison is really into what we're doing. But more importantly than that, David Ellison actually said he was a big fan. This is what they wrote in The Hollywood Reporter. They said this: after Netflix declined to raise its bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, and Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery agreed to move forward to the tune of $111 billion mega deal, questions arose about Gunn and Safran's future at the helm of DC Studios. According to Winther, Ellison is currently interested in the duo's work and slate, which, when announced in 2023, included 10 titles. He's pretty open to what we're doing. We do have a slate, and a lot of it, obviously. Clayface is already coming out. We already have the Lanterns TV show. On those things, the train's left the station, so we're good. But he's a big fan. He's been great with us. He's giving us kind of what we want so far. Everything's good. Now, you guys know that it already got leaked out a while ago that one of David Ellison's top priorities was keeping James Gunn and Peter Safran. I mean, yes, there were some people trying to spread rumors that he would want to get rid of James Gunn and Peter Safran. The reality was one of his top priorities was keeping James Gunn and Peter Safran. So he's gone over to go meet with them personally, saying he's a big fan, all that kind of stuff. And that's good. And listen, I want to give credit where credit is due. Okay? I think it is very admirable that because you guys know I don't want this merger to go through. I think it will go through, and I'm going to cheer for it once it does and hope it succeeds. But before that happens, I don't want it to go through. I want Warner Brothers to stay independent. That being said, I think David Ellison has done a number of things. You know, I crap on him when he does some stupid stuff, well deserved, but I also want to give credit when he does the right things. You know, they're trying to get UK approval. He personally got on a plane. He went over to Europe. He met with all the leaders, tried to explain their position and what they're doing. I like the fact that he got on a plane, went personally to meet face-to-face with James Gunn and Peter Safran and make his case about why everything's going to be great once Paramount buys it. Listen, it doesn't mean I changed my mind, but I think that's the right thing to do, and I want to give kudos where kudos are deserved. That being said, I just don't see reality. I just see no reality right now where James Gunn is going to still be at DC if this thing goes through. Now, I did an entire video about it once before, and I don't think any of the circumstances has changed. I think there's some practical business reasons why I think James Gunn still leaves. And I think there are some philosophical reasons why I think James Gunn leaves. On the professional level, you know, he just trusted the structure at Warner Brothers much more. The reality is, and even the biggest proponents of, David Ellison taking over Warner Brothers with Paramount will say it's going to be chaotic for a while. Like even the most staunch supporters of it are saying it will be chaotic for a while. And I don't think chaos is something James Gunn wants. You know, he had a very secure, a very stable setup at Warner Brothers. He only answered to one person at Warner Brothers, and that was to, you know, the Axe's Zaslav. He only answered to David Zaslav. That was the only person he had to report to. He had a lot of creative freedom, all the creative freedom in the world to do whatever he wanted to do. But most importantly, they weren't a company that was saddled with $80 billion of debt. And one of the things that we know is that if this merger goes through, and I believe it will, the combined Paramount Warner Brothers company is going to have close to $80 billion of debt. And just to remind everybody, Paramount's credit rating has just been dropped to junk bond status by the banking industry. That means they don't get, you guys know this, when you guys take out a loan, it ain't free. There's interest, always interest. And when your company gets dropped to junk bond status, you don't get the sweet family interest rate anymore. And even if Paramount is only going to be facing a 6% interest rate, which I think it'll be higher, but even if it's only 6%, they're going to be owing close to $5 billion a year in interest. To put that into perspective, Paramount's entire film catalog will not make that much money in the year, which means by the end of the year, they're going to owe even more money, and then more money and more money. And from a business perspective, I just don't see why a James Gunn would want to be in that kind of an unstable environment where clearly they're going to have to slash and cut and do all these types of things to try to keep the debt under control. It's going to be kind of crazy. Then, of course, there's the philosophical stuff. Jamon Lee, I declare bankruptcy in your best Michael Scott voice. Then, of course, comes the philosophical point, right? And, you know, we try to keep politics and movies separate here, but sometimes they're unavoidably cross over a bit here. So one cannot do this without pointing out Donald Trump really hates James Gunn. James Gunn really hates Trumple Foreskin. And the Ellisons are very big supporters of said Trumple Foreskin. And so that just creates a philosophical problem, I think, for James Gunn that I don't think he'll want to stick around in that environment. So there's a professional thing about lack of stability, debt problems, probably facing a lot of cuts. There's the philosophical part about that he just doesn't align with, he and the Ellisons just don't align. I think that's a fair, simple way to put it. He and the Ellisons don't align when it comes to worldview and world philosophy. So there's that. Now, either one of those two things maybe, possibly could maybe be overcome. But the other big thing to keep in mind about the situation is this. James Gunn's contract runs out in 2027. After the release of Man of Tomorrow. And I think, guys, and you might think I'm crazy, I think James Gunn, I think he finishes out his contract. I think he gets Man of Tomorrow complete, finished, out in theaters. And then I think he does and walks out the door. Wish
How's
you
he
well.
pay his bills?
How on earth is James Gunn going to eat? Because that's the other thing. You guys remember that when, you know, Disney fired James Gunn all those years ago, every single studio lined up at James Gunn's door with a blank check and said, you can do whatever you want to do. He chose Warner Brothers. There he went. Guys, there's no doubt the exact same thing's going to happen again. He's going to leave and every studio is going to make him offers to do whatever it is he wants to do. That's going to happen. And so I think he finishes out and goes. Now, let me be clear. James Gunn never told me he's leaving. Peter Safran never told me they're leaving. I am just a fan like anybody else, looking at the tea leaves and making my own guesses, just like anybody else. But I'm going to guess strong that James Gunn is going to go when this is all said and done and Paramount does take over. But again, kudos to David Ellison for getting on the plane, flying out there, making his case. I don't know, maybe it'll make a difference. Brian, this is obviously the biggest news story in all of movies right now. But do you think when the smoke settles, do you think James Gunn decides to say, you know what? Let's give it a shot for a year or two. Let's give it a shot. Or do you think he says, you know what? You, David Ellison, and I'm going to cheer for you, but we don't align philosophically. I'm going to go. I don't know. What do you think James Gunn ultimately does here?
Well, I think just seeing how James Gunn has operated, or from what we know, whether it's based on articles or even just how he interacts on social media and whatnot, I think if he feels creatively fulfilled and the movies do well, that's the only thing that's going to give us this idea that he might stick around. Because we know if he leaves and they have to blow up this new version of the DC universe, do we want to see another reset again? No one wants to see that, right? So, and he's the core at it. I think if Supergirl does well, enough, right? It may not get the biggest critical acclaim, but there's a lot of movies like that the fans of the genre have loved. I think that's as well. I'm really curious to see, although Clayface not a big mainstream name, how will that resonate with movie critics and audiences? But we're talking about, right, the next Superman movie. That's really his next crown jewel. If that does well enough, right? Maybe that's enough to have him come back, because at the same time, I mean, isn't the biggest thing in Hollywood that talks is money? So if that does well and Warner Brothers says, we're going to write you another blank check and we've got some great momentum, why would he leave at the same token?
Rob, what do you think about this? What happens after? Okay, so we fast forward a little over a year. Man of Tomorrow comes out. Does James Gunn stay? Does James Gunn leave? What do you think is going to happen? And what do you think is going to be the types of factors that determine what he decides to do?
Well, it's interesting because I do think that the James Gunn DC universe, we have sort of Peacemaker and we've got Superman. And that's it. We got Lanterns coming. We have Supergirl about to drop. And then we have Clayface and Man of Tomorrow. That's all. That's it. I don't see, I mean, that's like Supergirl. If Supergirl makes $500 million, $500 million, I think people will say it was a success. But it's not an extraordinary success. And if Lanterns is really good and people are like, wow, this is really spectacular. And then Clayface turns out to be a breakaway R-rated body horror hit, on it's like a $40 million budget or
very
something.
Inexpensive film.
Yeah. And if it makes $150 million, $200 million, that'll be seen as a pretty big win. But it's almost as if the DC universe is not quite up in the air. It's almost like if Man of Tomorrow comes in and nails that landing and becomes $1 billion movie, which I think it could, then the DC universe, as James Gunn has envisioned it, I think is at least safe. But I think there are two things there. That also allows him to walk away and pretty successful experiment. I hope somebody picks up the reins and takes it forward. I think he could leave with a smile on his face and feel like it was a job well done. I just don't want to work under the studio with this kind of oversight or whatever reason, and nobody would blame him for that. But if he leaves and the DC EU is in a shambles by the time Man of Tomorrow comes out, that'll be a different thing. But I lean into I think he's going to leave. I think he's going to leave either way, because either way that the DC EU won't have worked and he needs an exit strategy, he'll probably go to Marvel or somewhere else, or anybody else will be happy to pick him up, or he'll go do something else. I could see him leaving the studio system, at least for a while, and going back to his indie roots. He
does love that. He loves that.
If he goes and makes a new Slither and a new Super, it's not like Kevin Feige won't bring him back. He's only ever made them money.
Yeah.
Is he fatigued by the superhero genre himself? I mean, how long has he been doing it as well?
I mean, I doubt it because like this guy, he is one. I remember John Schnepp used to talk about him like in the Hollywood circles. He's one of the most read comic book guys his whole life. Like he's been a hardcore comic nut his whole life, James Gunn. So I doubt he's fatigued with it, but I mean, one never knows. I mean, there could be a lot of different factors that go into it, but I could also see a reality absolutely where he goes back to Marvel. I mean, him and Kevin Feige. Remember, James Gunn said when he took the DC job, he said the very first phone call he made was to Kevin Feige. Those two are very, very tight, and I could see that happening too. But anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think happens here? David Ellison, listen, full credit to him. He got on a plane. He flew across the country. He went to go meet with James Gunn on the set of his movie. He says he's a big fan, wants to keep him around, but I just don't see James Gunn staying. Maybe you guys can see it where he's staying. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Guys, we want to take a second and thank a sponsor of today's video, Hims. You know, one of the hardest things about trying to lose weight is just figuring out what actually works, because we've seen them all. There are a million trends, diets, and gimmicks out there, and honestly, it can get overwhelming. And that's why weight loss by Hims really stands out. Hims now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill at its lowest price ever, and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hims, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite and eat less, so success is within reach. Plus, Wegovy is the first ever and only GLP-1 available in a pill for weight loss, so there are no needles needed. And the process is extremely convenient. Everything happens online. You connect with a licensed provider who determines if treatment is right for you, and if prescribed, your medication gets delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. Ready to reach your goals? Visit hims.com/Campea to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's HIMS.com/Campea. hims.com/Campea. Based on advertised cash price for 30-day supply of medication only. Membership required, fee not included, and billed separately. Weight loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A.S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com.